this. All right. Welcome y'all. Can y'all see the screen? All right. So today we're gonna start with reviewing what was due for this Friday. We'll just change this to backend. He could have named this something different. I don't want people confusing. Oops. I don't know why it knocked me all the way over there just for pasting. But yeah. So last week's homework was essentially two things. If you wanted more experience with HTML and really to play with it more and understand page layouts, there was a HTML tutorial that you could look at specifically for marking up a letter. This one really breaks down the tags, the main tags, inline semantics, head of document, stuff like that. A lot of stuff we already covered, but just extra assignment, extra experience with how you should lay out or structure your HTML document. Did anyone have a chance to try this, marking up a letter? It's okay if you haven't. Not really the main thing you had to do.
I was not able to.
No problem. If you ever feel like you need or want to try more, please feel free to go through this stuff. There's plenty of stuff in here, even if you're just reading it. But otherwise, our first project will be creating a newsletter. So this right here is going to give you the foundation you need in case you're like, hey, I don't really know what I got to do. The next assignment, your main assignment that was due, was to play a CSS game. Why a CSS game? CSS is all about styling, right? The styling that we want to do is for user interaction and user experience. So the best way to understand that is by styling something and seeing how that styling interacts with a page, with a browser. So today we're going to play, for our little review, we're going to play one of these games. I'm going to let y'all choose which game we play. We can try a few different ones. But do y'all have any preference in game that we choose?
I want to try the frog one.
The frog one? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's something called Flexbox. Flexbox. All right. Before we even play this, let's go through a little. What is Flexbox? Let me hide my floating controls. What is Flexbox? All right, we only really need to read this stuff on the side. CSS Flexbox, flexible box layout, commonly known as Flexbox, is a CSS3 web layout model. It is in W3C's candidate recommendation stage. The Flex layout allows responsive elements within a container to be automatically arranged depending upon screen size. So the reason why Flexbox is super popular is because Flexbox allows you to build a web app and automatically port that web app to a phone app, to a tablet, to an iPod, whatever. I don't know what people be using. What are iTablets? iPads. So yeah, like it will automatically adjust to your screen size, which is very nice when you want to develop a web app for also people to use on their mobile web browser or their iPad web browser, and it's constantly changing, which is much nicer than putting in a static value. Let me show you what a static value would look like. Static values, 1.5, 15px. Like these are static values versus like something like 1M. That will change depending on the specifications of your Windows screen. So let me show you also changing the specification of our window screen. I don't like doing this on Safari. You got to go to like enter responsive design mode, and then you can like tell it to treat it as if you're on the iPad Pro. But as you can see, like these are different ways your page will render. And as this page is designed pretty well, you're not really gonna struggle with seeing all these elements because it knows how to fix the elements for when you're on a certain type of view. All right, so now we're gonna get out of this. Now that we understand what Flexbox is very useful for, let's play with some Flexbox. So all this stuff is going to teach us how to write our CSS. In this right here, we have a selector, a CSS selector for the ID of pond, right? Or yeah, the ID of pond. Hashtags are for IDs. Periods are for classes. So now we have this design, display flex. Once you say display flex, the computer or the browser will know, oh, okay, this everything underneath this thing should be treated as Flexbox and respect the Flexbox rules. So these are the Flexbox rules. Welcome to Flexbox Froggy, a game where you help Froggy and friends by writing CSS code. Guide this frog to the lily pad on the right by using justified content property, which aligns items horizontally and accepts the following values. So the first thing is justified content is how we're going to be, is the property we're going to be using to adjust where this frog is. For example, justified context, flex end being the value, items aligned to the right side of the container, will move the frog to the right. So let's try that. Flex end. And so you see frog moved over. Cool, cool, cool. And then you get to next. Now you get to try it with these two. All right, so I'm gonna have one of y'all speak up on this one. Use justified content again to help these frogs get to their lily pads. Remember that the CSS property aligns items horizontally and accepts the following values. All right, so we obviously want the yellow frog to the yellow and the green frog to the green. So don't feel wrong. Don't feel bad about guessing which value if you can't really figure it out. We're just gonna go popcorn style. Once one person guesses or say their reason or whatever, we're gonna switch to the next. All right, I'm gonna start with Emma. This is your first time here. Put you on the spot. Which one do you want to try to get these frogs over here? Here are your options.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'ma say Flexbox, the space between. Wait,
Right.
what are we? Where do we want the frog to go?
We want them on the pads. So the yellow.
So center.
All right, let's try center. All right, it worked. Perfect, perfect. All right, next is Will. Help all three frogs find their lily pads just by using justified content. This time the lily pads have lots of space all around them. If you find yourself forgetting the possible values, you can hover over the property name to view them. Try hovering over justified content. So these are the ones, these are your options, Will. Which one do you think will get us the frogs here?
Probably space evenly.
All right, let's try it. Boom, 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 boom. Why is it complaining? It did not work. Space evenly got them very close, but not exactly correctly. All right, next is Angelica. Let me hear your guess. Here are your options. Angelica, there's a popcorn style. We gotta be quick.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Let me hear your guess.
Space between.
All right, let's try space between. All right, space between also did not work. So space evenly applied even amount of space between them, but space evenly forces it to match the entire width of the pond and put space between each of them so that way they match the entire width of the pond. So that is, both of those are not exactly correct. But let's try Anelia. What's your guess?
Probably. What if you combine? Are we able to combine them?
These are your options. Just
You
choose
can
one.
only do one. Okay.
Just choose one of these. Quickly. no guesses.
Space around.
All right, thank you. All right, space around works. Why does space around works? Space around applies equal amount of spacing, like treat it like as a square box. You can kind of see it. I don't know if y'all can see it. Can y'all see that? That nice even square box of space between them. So like they put them all in a little grid spot. Does that make sense? Can y'all see that?
Yes.
All right. Versus like space evenly and space around and space between. Space between is in respect to the full width of the page, and space evenly just wants them to have even space in between them, in between the three elements, which is really just in respect to the elements. Space around doesn't really care so much about the specific elements, but make sure that they have equal space around them in all directions. All right, let's keep going on. Let's keep going on. Now the lily pads on the edge have drifted to the shore. Increase the space between them. Use justified content. All right, let's try this one. All right, Emma, you're back up. You see the pads are where the pads are and where these frogs need to be in respect to the pads.
Can you show me the options?
Yes.
So that would be the space between.
All right, let's try it. Boom. Correct, because it was the full width of the page. So now we're seeing, let me see if I can change this. I don't know if y'all can see this thing, but I want to move this out the way. All right, so now we're going to use align items to help the frogs get to the bottom of the pond. So while justified content was for horizontal, align item can allow us to do it the same thing, but vertically, right? All right, so let's try this. Who's next? Will. Here are your value options, and the property we're doing this time is align items.
I want to say baseline.
Baseline items display at the baseline of the container. All right, let's try that. All right. Baseline of the container, it seems the container is still here. So the baseline of the container is still at the same spot. Let's inspect to confirm that. So we have these three. We have board. We have the pond. Under the pond is these three. And then we have the background. Well, I'm not exactly sure why baseline sticks there if the div of pond is considered the whole entire thing, but it did not change it in respect to the div of pond. So let's try a different one. Who's next? Angelica?
Flex end.
Flex end. Align items to the bottom of the container. Yep, that's the one. So items display at the baseline of the container. Let's find out what that does. Baseline of the container. What's the difference between flex start and baseline? The below code snippet gives same output for align self flex start and align self baseline. In which cases will align self flex start and align self baseline behave differently? Ah, the baseline is up here. The baseline is at the top. All right, so me and you both got tricked, Will. The immediate the immediate thought is, oh, baseline is at the bottom, but baseline is actually here. I got tricked again. All right, so flex start is going to be in respect to the start. This is where the line is going to be. Baseline is going to be in respect to this. When using align items or align self, the flex start value will align flex items at the starting edge of the cross axis of the flex container. The baseline will align flex items along their contents baseline. Baseline, the line which upon most letters sit and below which descenders extend. Ah, I'm learning something new. Never would have thought baseline is considered this, but it makes more sense that it's at the bottom than it would be at the top. So I'm still not sure why exactly it sat at the top, other than the fact that maybe we're seeing something like B or E, where it was trying to adjust itself in respect of the baseline, but like the actual object, the actual div was treated as much larger. All right. All right, let's try a few more. We're gonna do a few more, then we're gonna switch to selectors. Who is next? Angelica? Lead the frog to the center of the pod. Using a combination of justified content and align items. All right, Angelica, let's hear it. So the first thing is justify content. First thing we're gonna do is justify content. Horizontal. Where do you want it horizontally?
Can we try baseline center?
Justify content does not have baseline, so I'm gonna assume this one you want
Center, sorry. Yeah, center.
And then align items, I'm gonna put to baseline. All right, so again, this thing in respect to baseline is not going where you expect it to go. So it seems to be considering its baseline at here, like where you see this line is. But also, wait a minute. That's why. All right, look at this, right? I was not paying as close attention as I needed to. So align items to the baseline, but underneath it is immediately a div containing another div. So it's in respect to this div and not in respect to the pond. Since this is align items or justify content is looking at what's underneath it in respect to that. So this is the container for the frog. This is the actual frog. This is the container for the frog. And this is baseline in respect to this container. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the baseline of this container is obviously in the same spot because it's not really moving. So next is Arnelia. We have it in the center. It's not baseline. Baseline is only going to affect as much as this div is affected. So where do we want to move this in respect to?
Align items is going to be center as well.
All right, let's put it in the center of the page. Boom, 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 boom. All right. Let's try two or three more. I think we're kind of getting it though. Next is Emma. You have the frogs need to cross the pond, this time for some lily pads with plenty of space around them. Use a combination, justify content and align items. What we got?
Can I see the options again? So justify content, space around.
All right, what about line items?
And then can I see the line items options again? And then flex ends.
Good. All right, cool. So I see y'all are starting to catch on. All right, so now we have a different one. The frogs need to get in the same order as their lily pads using flex direction. The CSS property defines the direction items are placed in the container and accepts the following values: row, row reverse, column, and column reverse. All right, so flex direction is to treat the page as if it's in a grid. Or maybe not necessarily a grid. Maybe that's not the best explanation. But I'm gonna say a grid because we have rows and columns. So hopefully you can imagine rows and columns as a little grid thing. All right, so who's next? Will. We have flex direction and we're trying to move them over to the right.
I want to say row reverse.
Items are placed opposite to the text direction. All right, that's a little confusing explanation, but you are absolutely correct. Row reverse. All you had to do was flip them over to the other side. If we were treating them as like along this line, flip them over to the next. All right, Angelica.
Column.
Correct. I mean, I'm pretending like I don't know. Let's see. Correct. All right, Arnelia. Help the frog get their own lily pads. Although they seem close, it will take both flex direction and justified content to get them there. This is a challenge. All right. Start with flex direction. Here are your options, Amelia.
I'm going to do, I think, row reverse
Okay.
for the flex direction. And then you
Right
said
now, how are we going to do it with justified content?
and then for that is it's flex start. Flex start would not do that. Do that.
How do we know? Just guess.
All right, I guess I'll do flex start. Oh, do you have to put like to the left in the parentheses? Like why?
All right. Flex start did not do it. I did think flex start was going to do it. All right.
I will.
Who's next? Emma, your turn to guess. We're trying to get this to shift over to the left. Just guess.
Flex ends.
All right, cool. I think this is the correct one. And the only reason why is because of the fact that we reversed it. So since we did row reverse, the start is still at the left. And also, justified content flex start is always the default. So if we don't put anything here, if we don't even include this, it's already going to be at flex start. So that's our mag. This is telling us this is a start of where the element is at because of row reverse. So we want it actually at the end because it is reverse rather than the start. Nice little trick, but very clearly show you how to do it. All right, so I think that's enough Flexbox for now. If you want to further increase your skill set with Flexbox, feel free to go and hop into this game. We're gonna go look at another game. This one is gonna be really good for understanding selectors. All right. So does anybody know what a CSS selector is? Anyone?
They're basically like types, IDs, descendants, and classes, I guess.
Okay, that's pretty close. Selector is a general word for something that is going to literally select an element on your page. There's things called query selectors, which whole job is to select something on the page based off of a query, right? Based off of a query. Selectors, a string containing one or more selector to match. The string must be a valid CSS selector string. If it isn't, a syntax error exception is thrown. So let's learn what are the valid CSS selector strings, right? So the first selector we're going to learn about is a type selector. Selects elements by their type. Selects all elements of type A. Why does it say type A? It only says type A because the selector, the type here is an A type. I would rather, instead of saying A type, I want y'all to think about this as element, because these are really selecting elements as they are. So type refers to the type of tag, aka what type of element. So a div is a div instead of the A, P is a P instead of the A, and UL is UL instead of the A. So if we want to select all divs, all we have to do is type div as our selector. If you want to select all P tags, all we have to do is type P as our selector. So type in a CSS selector. We got to type in a CSS selector. Select the plates. The plates have selector. The plate has the tag of plate, also known as an element of plate. And then the table, well, we can't highlight over the table, but I'm assuming the table has a selector of table. So I'm going to do the first one, super easy. Plate, that's our first thing. All right, Emma, your turn. You're going to go and get a type selector. You want to get the bento boxes. Here's the bento, here's a plate. Which one are we typing in? Oh, there's the div, class of table. All right.
Wait, so where do I want to put it?
No, what selector do you want, right? So we're selecting elements by their type, which just means the type of tag they are. If this is a div, then we're going to say div to select all divs, right? If this is a bento and we want to grab all bentos, all we got to do is type bento. If we want to grab all P tags, all we got to do is type Ps. If we want to grab all plate tags, we got to type plate. So all we're doing is typing in one selector. Select the bento boxes.
So then you just type in bento.
All right, so this is our selector. When we type in bento, we got specifically bentos. All right, select the fancy plate. Will, this is your turn. Select the fancy plate. Now this fancy plate has an ID of fancy, but it's still a plate. ID selectors, select elements with an ID by calling hashtag and then the name of the ID. Selects the element with a specific ID. You can also combine the ID selector with the type selector. So here's an example of them just doing an ID selector of cool. And then here's an example of selecting a UL with the ID of long. So Will, your turn. Let me hear your guess, man. Doesn't have to be perfect.
Just be ID fancy.
ID fancy. You said what?
ID fancy.
You want me to type ID fancy? Be very specific in what I'm typing.
Okay. Hashtag ID spicy. Not spicy, fancy.
Hashtag ID fancy.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
All right, so that does not work. I'm going to go on to the next person. Angelica, we're trying to get the fancy plate.
So for the fancy place, OP hashtag fancy.
All right, cool. All right, cool. All right, next, Arnelia, select the apple on the plate. Descendant Selector, select an element inside another element. So the first is the tag that is the parent, and then you put a space in between it, and then the tag that is the child. When you do that, it'll select all B's elements inside of A. So for an example, if I did P strong, it'll select all the strong elements as long as they are a child element of a P tag. If I wanted to do fancy, hashtag fancy, it'll select spans that are inside of anything with a ID of fancy, which ideally should be one thing since it's an ID. So Arnelia, how would you want me to select the apple on the plate?
Okay, so we're gonna do plate and then apple. Okay.
Plate and then apple. Cool, cool, cool. Select the pickle on the fancy plate. All right, this is you, Emma. Combine the descendant and the ID selectors.
So
We have a pickle on the
do the
ID.
ID selector first.
Huh?
You do the ID selector first.
Okay. So we're gonna go and take ID. ID what?
ID hashtag fancy. And then
You can also see the HTML layout on the right side over here. So we have a bento with a child of orange. We have the fancy plate with a child of pickle. We have a plate.
oh, I got you. Okay, so then you do hashtag fancy and then you do the carrot sideways triangle thing. Pickle
Like this or like this?
like that. Or pickle space slash.
All right. So this did not work, even if we did pickle space slash. This will also not work. Do you understand the reason why it's not working?
Oh, because it has to go equal.
I'm not sure what you mean by equal. So on the left side here is the HTML layout of the page, right? This is
Right.
just the layout of the page, but this right here is talking about the styling of the page. And what we are doing is selecting elements on the page based off of their style selectors. Style selectors mean these are things that are going to specify how this is styled. If I choose to write pickle, or if I choose to write fancy, and then, oops, not with the space, just fancy, and then display flex. Remember this syntax? This is saying this is a property, and this is how the property should treat itself in terms of how it's going to be styled on the page. So this is the selector. This part is the selector. This part is the actual style.
Oh, we only want to select the pickle on the fancy plate.
Yes. So we're trying to use the selector to target which element we are going to be styling with whatever styles we're using. So we have the fancy, hashtag fancy. Hashtag will grab anything that has an ID. Hashtag will grab anything that has an ID and check if its ID value equals fancy. So right now we have an ID that equals fancy. We need to grab pickle. How do we grab pickle? We can use a selector to grab the tag of the straight element. And the tag of this element is literally just pickle.
So
Does that
it's
make
just like
sense?
fancy pickle.
Yeah. Make sense? Make sense? I'm assuming you're on a phone call.
Yes, makes sense. Thank you.
Who's next? Will. All right. So now we want you to select the small apples. This apple and this apple. One is on a plate, one is not. How are we going to do that? Select elements by their class. Apple has class small. This apple also has class small. So if we use a period, we grab things by their class, and then we just have to say their class name, and they'll select all the elements with class equals whatever we name it. So Will, this is all you.
Period small.
Good, good, good. All right, who is next? Angelica.
All right, let me see here.
All right, you have combined the class selector. You can combine the class selector with other selectors like the type selector. UL.important selects all UL elements that have class important. We want to select the small oranges. All the oranges that are small have a class of small, but we also have an apple that has the class of small. So we gotta make sure we're only getting the orange.
Orange.small.
Yeah. All right, select those small oranges in the bento. We're gonna go until 8:10, and then we're gonna switch to the Udemy class. All right, Arnelia, this is you. You can do it. Put your back into it. Combine what you learned in the last few levels to solve this one. It is all you.
Are you talking to Arnelia?
Yes, I'm talking to you, Arnelia. You're after Angelica.
Oh, yeah, this is so, all right. I'm so sorry, bento.
Small oranges in the bentos.
Yeah, no, I'm giving you the answer, bento.
Okay.
Space. Orange.small.
All right. Good job.
Okay.
All right. Emma, we're getting into the harder ones. These are really going to practice and test your ability to select CSS styles. Select all the plates in the bentos, Emma. All the plates and the bentos. You can use a comma combinator. Combine selectors with commas. Thanks to Shatner technology. I don't know what that is, but we don't really care who made the thing. So many people made things. Thank you for all their contributions. This selects all A and B elements. You can combine any selector this way, and you can specify more than two. P comma dot fun selects all P elements. A P div selects all A, P, and div elements. So all plates, all bentos.
So it would be plate, comma, space, bento.
Good job. All right. Will, select all the things. Super easy one. The universal selector. You can select everything with this. If you want to select any element inside of a specific element, then you do the space. Otherwise, you can do this P comma, same things, but star is how you do the universal. Will.
Yeah, I'm thinking 1 second, bro. 1 second.
This selector selects everything. You want to select everything. Let me hear your guess, because we do have only 8 minutes.
I tried div star, but I didn't work.
Div star. So the reason why that won't work is because now you're only selecting everything that's underneath the div. If you see this, we have a div class table, and then we have apple, plate, bento, plate. This will only grab all the elements underneath the div, but we want you to grab the table included. Select all the things mean all the things. All right, Angelica, your turn.
It will be.
Quickly, come on.
All right, sorry. So was the one that goes down.
Give me a guess.
Plate.
Plate.
and then the asterisk.
All right, so why this? What are we grabbing here? It only grab everything underneath plate. The only thing underneath plate is an orange class small. We want everything. All right, Arnelia, your turn.
It's the asterisk only.
All right. Why is it the asterisk only? Asterisk only is everything, including the div table. It grabbed everything. We just wanted everything. So now we want everything on a plate. Emma, your turn. Everything on a plate.
You do plate space asterisk.
All right. All right. Grabbed everything that was on a plate. Select every apple that's next to a plate. Adjacent sibling selector selects an element that directly follows another element. What does that mean? Selects an element that directly follows another element. Bento, what directly follows it is a plate. So this selector is gonna A, B. If A is bento and B is plate, it's gonna be grabbing all the plates next to a bento. Does that make sense? Who's next? Will. All right, Will, does that make sense? And if so, let me hear your guess. Select every apple that is next to a plate. I can't hear you, Will.
Am I muted?
There you go. Let me hear your guess.
I tried apple plus plate, but that didn't work.
Apple plus plate. All right, this most likely is not gonna work.
Yeah.
And the only reason why is this selects all B elements that directly follow the A element. You have in the wrong order. I'm not gonna call on Angelica because this is going to be obvious now. Angelica, you have general sibling selector, selects elements that follows another element. You can select all siblings of an element that follows it. This is like the adjacent selector, except it gets all of the following elements instead of one. So the last one only grabbed the first. I misspoke. I said it grabbed everything that's next to a plate, but realistically only grabs one. This one's gonna grab everything. So this is gonna grab all the pickles. We're trying to grab all the pickles beside the bento.
So it's gonna be bento,
Correct.
the sibling selector, pickle.
Cool. All right, 806. All right, we're getting real deep into them. All right, Arnelia.
I
Select
told her to come upstairs.
the apple directly on a plate. Here's specifically a child selector. So the other one we did was when you just do the space, it selects anything below it, not necessarily the direct child. This one is going to grab the direct child. So if there's things that are nested under something nested under something nested under something nested, like this perfect example, div nested, a plate nested under div, bento nested under plate, apple nested under bento. We don't want to grab everything that's under plate. We just want to grab the apple that's directly under plate, which would be this one, apple directly under plate.
So plate, whatever that sign is.
Greater than? Plate.
Yeah. Oh, wow. An apple.
Perfect. All right, Emma. We have pseudo selectors. What is a pseudo selector? You are allowed to make up names. Select a first child element inside of another element. As you see, there's nothing here that says first child. You can select the first child element. A child element is any element that is directly nested in another element. You can combine this pseudo selector with other selectors. First child selects all first child elements. P first child selects all first child P elements. Div P first child selects all first child elements that are in a div. So this first child is called pseudo selector. Let's see why. I'm pretty sure it's because there's nothing on the actual HTML pseudo selector that points to this thing. Pseudo class. What are pseudo selectors? Pseudo classes are used to add styles to selectors, but only when those selectors meet certain conditions. A pseudo class is expressed by adding a colon after a selector in CSS, followed by a pseudo class such as hover, focus, or active, like this, a hover, and then you put your style here. All right, so there are specific things that are pseudo classes. In this example, they have first child. Select the top orange. I'm guessing we're going to do first child here as well. This is a little confused, I'm not going to lie. But let's try the first child specifically. Who is next?
Oh.
Emma?
So do you have to use like the last selector that we looked at to indicate that we're dealing with the oranges?
No, this is in respect to this one page. So you just need to look at what you have here. You have a
Okay.
plate, you have your oranges, and figure out how to get the top orange. And you can see the top orange is the first one. And they gave us
So-
a pseudo
so it would
selector called first child.
It would be plate colon first child.
All right. All right, that did not work. Why did not work? Selects all first child P elements. Did you mean space P space? Did I miss that? Did you say plate space?
I said plate colon.
Got you. All right, Will, you're up next. Plate first child did not work. The reason it did not work is because, as this says, selects all first child plate elements. If you put the P, then select all first child plate elements in this example. But we're not trying to grab all first child plate elements. We're trying to grab the top orange.
Try adding the space between plate and first child. Like between
Alright.
colon.
So that works. I wish we could, I could also, I can't go back. So that works. What also would have worked would be orange first child, orange colon first child, because that'd be the first child of the oranges. Otherwise, it grabbed everything under the plate. That was the first child.
What was that? It froze up for a second.
Oh, I said the orange colon first child would have also worked, because that would have been grabbing the first child elements, all first child elements that are oranges. Plate space first child works because it grabbed any element that's below a plate that is the first child, which is still just an orange. All right, this is going to be our last one. Angelica, take us home. Select the apple and the pickle on the plates. They're giving you another pseudo selector. Only child.
So it's gonna be apple only child, comma, pickle only child. Well, semicolon only child. Well, yeah.
All right, that did not work. Select the apple and the pickle on the plates. Plate. Why did it not work? Select an element that are the only element inside of another one. So we got to think about where the element is in respect to the other elements. What is inside of pickle? Who is the only child of pickle? Pickle has no children. Pickle closes itself off. Pickle has vasectomy. There are no children for pickle. So we want the only child of plate, correct? Right? We want the only child of plate because plate has these children. The only problem is that we have oranges here. That's also a plate. So, Arnelia, what do you think? 2 more minutes. Let's go.
Let's see. I Let's try plate only child. I want to try that.
Plate only child. All right, so again, we have 3 plates here. Plate with a child of apple, plate with a child of pickle, and then plate with these 2 children. One is orange and one is orange class small.
Oh, plate,
Second animal.
apple, only child.
Oh
So,
yeah, that's why. Let's say apple.
This one
only
does not
child.
work.
So it's
Who's
actually
next? Emma. Emma. I think Emma. Yeah, Emma. All right, Emma, your turn. So this time we were grabbing. If you saw, we grabbed. Oh, it didn't show us. Never mind. I thought it would show us what we were grabbing, but it should have been all 3 of these plates. Children.
You're cutting up. I don't know if it's on my end or your end.
Oh, it's
but
probably
I
on my
tried
end.
turning.
It's definitely his own because it's happening to us too.
Yeah.
Okay.
My Wi-Fi is not good. But did you hear enough? Like it didn't work. Why it did
I
not work?
think so.
The reason it did not work is because we have 3 plates and we only want these 2 elements. So let me hear your guess, Emma. This is a hard one. Come on. Quick.
Okay, so it would be plate and then I don't know. I feel like I want to use like a comma to like combine the tomato and the pickle, but I don't know how that would work. No, I feel like it has to be plate colon.
We only have 1 pseudo selector. So if you're doing colon, it has to be only child.
And that one doesn't work because it's all the plates.
Yes, all the plates. We only want these 2. These 2, apple and pickle. Select an element that are the only element inside of another one. So when you apply the only child selector to an element, it will only select it if that element is inside of another one. If that specific element is inside of another one.
Yeah.
So we want the element that is inside of another one.
Oh, so it would be like the thing at the bottom. So it would be like a U. Then is that an L thing?
This is a parent. This is a parent, and this space means descendant. So this is only grabbing things that are inside of UL. The LI is going to be underneath the UL, and it's only grabbing LIs that are the only children inside of a UL.
So would it be a UL and then
we have no ULs. This is our actual makeup. We have plate, bento, plate, div, no ULs. These are
Okay,
our tags.
It would be plate and then the L thing.
Okay, we have no LIs. There are no LIs on the HTML makeup. These are your elements. LI is just an example.
What I want to do is like with the thing at the bottom where it says the UL, like how do I what I was thinking is like it was if it was UL and then it was apple comma pickle then only child then colon on or
apple comma pickle then only child.
But then I don't know how to select like apple pickle on plate.
All right, I'm gonna give y'all one more shot at this and I'm gonna tell y'all the answer and why. All right, who's next? Will, are you gonna bring us home?
All right. Plate.
So I'll explain again. this pseudo selector is attached onto an element, and it will only select the element if it's inside of another one, if it's the only child inside of the other one. I technically misspoke when I was saying, hey, we can't do the pickle only child, because pickle only child, I misunderstood that as grabbing the only child of pickle, but it's not grabbing the only child pickle. It's selecting an element that is the only child. So in respect to pickle having a parent of plate, that you can apply the only child selector to pickle.
Plate space apple.
Okay. This is not going to work.
Comma.
The reason why it does not work, one, we're not using the only child selector, so we're not even trying like to apply what the lesson is trying to teach. Two, it's not going to work because plate space pickle or plate space apple is only grabbing one of these elements. We need the apple and the pickle.
That's why I put the comma. Put the comma. I think I tried it on my other screen and it worked somehow. So I was trying to see if it was gonna work again.
All right, you said plate space apple pickle.
No. Plate again. Yeah, delete the pickle. And then put the colon only child there.
Okay. My bad. I did not hear you fully. All right, boom. All right, you brought us home. Good job. So the reason that worked is because the pickle existed outside the plate as well. So we needed specifically that, right? The correct pickle. I don't remember which level we're at. 17. So let's look at that again. So we had 3 pickles. We only had 1 apple. So plate and apple was enough to get the apple. Then we needed to get the pickle, but we only needed a pickle that's specifically under plate. So we could even just say pickle only child, because if we said pickle only child, we would have gotten the pickle that's underneath the bento as well, as you can see. Yeah, now it's showing the shake. But we wanted the pickle that's specifically underneath the plate. So as Will said, plate space pickle only child got us past it. All right, so those are selectors. We're gonna really see a real life application of it now. We were just looking at these games, which is has these random tags. These aren't real tags that we'd be using. But anybody who went through the HTML work is aware of what HTML really looks like. Please watch the previous YouTube videos that have been hosted up, and you will understand better what's going on between these things. All right, to the Udemy class, it's 8:21. We're a little bit over, but hopefully this was helpful for what we're going to be doing next. No, what are you talking about logging? Was I on Chrome? Was that one? Yes, I was. All right. We are 20% complete with becoming full stack front end developers. That's crazy. We're 1/5 of the way there. All right. We are going to be jumping straight into section 5. What is CSS? How to use it?
Once you've built out your HTML document, in order to really bring it to life, you need to add some styling. And within the HTML part of this course, we had looked at how we can do this style. So add these inline style tags. And these in itself, they're going to be CSS tags themselves. So here, if I want to set a background color for this particular section, I can do it this way. And if I want to add in a color, a font color, so I can do it this way. So I want to add in maybe a more blue color, and so on. So I can continue to add in a bunch of style to this particular element in HTML. And when I go out here, I can see that my style has been applied. So anything that falls within that element gets the styling applied to it. Now, this really, the thing with styling is that it's meant to save you time, and it's meant to be easy to manipulate and maneuver and change. So this is why we prefer to bring styling out of the particular elements of HTML, and we want to break it up and use it within style or connect it to a style sheet, so a CSS sheet itself. The reason being that if we had several different divs here and we want to apply that styling to both divs, we'd have to rewrite that code and repaste that code, and it comes to be a lot of work with styling itself. And especially if we want to apply different styles. So if we want to build out this navigation menu, so we'd have to apply a whole bunch of style attributes to these elements, and we'd have to do it over and over and over and over again in order for it to apply across all these different elements. So it's really not the most efficient way to add in styling into your web page. So a better way to do that would be to use a styling sheet. And the way that we do that, so what we're doing is we're just attaching this styling to this div. So we're going to be able to remove out style. We're not going to have to copy and paste style over like this into every single div that we want to apply the styling to. And we just want to have a universal background color for any div that we're creating. And then as well have a font color. So the way to do that is we just create using the tag div, because we want to apply it to all divs. And we're going to talk about how to be more specific later on and how to be able to select specific elements, adding in styling to specific elements within HTML. So we can see here that once we remove this and we go back out to the page, we can see here that we still haven't refreshed it, but now when we do refresh it, we've got that same set of styling applied to both. And this would go for any additional div that we create. So if we were to create a brand new div here, adding text, and we close that off, we can see that in fact, this is going to get applied to this one as well. So I'm going to put some padding so you can see the spacing between the divs. So I'm just going to apply some uniform padding around them. So you can see that there is actually spacing between them. Or actually, that should be margin. So
Got a little video error. But really just wanted the explanation of what is CSS and how to use it. We get to see this style tag in HTML as we reviewed before. And then they're throwing in styling inside of it. General understanding is CSS is the styling of your HTML, and this is what changes how it looks. Also adds interactive stuff. Let's look at create CSS code, CSS selectors. We already learned about CSS selectors, but let's go and look at CSS selectors in respect to HTML.
In the previous example, we had just been using these HTML tags as examples of our CSS. And in addition to tags, you can use IDs and classes to be really more specific with your selectors. So let's say we had a particular, I'm going to add in a span here, and I'm going to give it an ID of new span. Close it up. And I'm just going to select this little bit of text within there. And then also I'm going to do another span down here, and I'm going to do a class. And we'll show you what the difference is between classes and IDs.
So real quick, let's open up our IDEs. Let me just stack these two next to each other. And we have, not these assets. We have our index.html file that we've been playing around with, right? We've been adding the styling to this. We have some classes, we have some IDs, we have some P tags and some A tags, all these things that were selected and styled. Let me run this run it on Chrome. So we can get to see what our website looks like, what our fake little website looks like with all our fun little styling that we added to it. I doubt we're gonna be doing any of these because we've done a lot of these already, but this is a nice little reviewer just to wrap up what we learned, what we're practicing, and to get our course content completed.
And how to use them. So a class is, if you're familiar with CSS, you might use it several times. So we might have a bunch of different classes and they might be scattered out throughout our content. And with IDs, you're only using ID once within that HTML code on the page. So that's the big difference between IDs and classes. And as well within the CSS, we've got different ways to identify them. So when we're going back to our CSS, we identify IDs by doing that percentage sign. And there we have a listing Dreamweaver's getting us that span there. And now we're going to enter in some properties. So let's make the background. So we're going to really just try to make this background white maybe so that it will stand out from that div background. And again, with backgrounds, there actually are a few different ways that you can use colors within your HTML. So one of the ways that we're just going to cover that off really quickly before we continue. So as you can see here, what I'm using is this hexadecimal type format, and this is what Dreamweaver is returning by default. You can also use things like predefined color names. So I believe aqua is one of them, and this will give us an aqua background. And you can use that anywhere you want to apply colors. So color, again, is going to be that color.
My poor Wi-Fi.
And then over here is just the alpha color. So the newer, more modern browsers will accept this. The older ones might not accept it, but they'll just accept that RGB color. So this is going to be the same thing as the hexadecimal color. So it's just going to work in the same type of format. And with hexadecimal, you always have that ability to do that short. So you can do the 3 that's short as well.
So very important to notice when you are developing websites, you have to develop in respect to the browsers because that's how most people access websites. We want to have the most amount of people be able to access our website and not just people who are using new browsers. Older browsers like Internet Explorer, some people still use that over like Microsoft Edge. And because of that, they might not accept certain specific things that are allowed in newer browsers. As he was mentioning, this fourth, I'm not even sure what to describe this. I guess this fourth argument value in RGBA, this would not be allowed in older browsers like Internet Explorer. If you want to use RGB, you'd have to use RGB and not RGBA and only use 3 values. So we always got to think when we're developing in respect to our users, the client, and what they have access to, along with what makes the most sense to us. I'm not really familiar with RGB, red, green, black. I think that's what it stands for. But like if someone comes from a more artistic background, that might make more sense to them. And if they're doing specifically styling stuff, styling in terms of RGB might get them to their specific color that they really want to get to, rather than something like saying red, which will give you a predefined color. So yeah, it really gives you the ability to be as specific as you need to be. And we have to always remember that we are building these websites in respect to browsers for people who are of a wide variety of ages. Some people who are young, some people who are very old.
So when we go back up to the page, just going to quickly refresh that, and you can see that the short on the background, now this is a short for purple, and we did the background aqua. So here we've got that background div is aqua, and the color of the font is that reddish color. And this is essentially the different, these are essentially the different options that you have with coloring. And as you can see here, there's a whole bunch of different options here for coloring. So usually I try to stick to the 6 hexadecimal characters, but you can see here that Dreamweaver also applies sometimes these shorter ones. So this is white. So same thing as typing in white or doing FFFF. So it's all the same. It's just how you're used to working with the colors. So usually you try to work with one type of format and just try to stick to that. So getting back to our styling with, it's going to remove out those changes. So getting back to the styling and how we picked that different ID. And as we had mentioned, IDs are used for only one time within your HTML. And we see that we've got these spans that are used on a regular basis. So if we wanted to maybe, we've got a few options here for classes. So the way that classes work, or I should say classes instead of spans there. So we've got classes and they can be used anywhere. So you can use that same class.
Sorry about that. But the key point here is that classes are used more generally. IDs are for one specific selector. ID should be the identifier for one. Class is representative of a group.
You can reuse it over and over again. And all of these properties are going to get applied to any element within HTML that contains this class. So here, again, we're going to maybe set a background. And we're just going to type in yellow. So it's like kind of like a highlighted text font. And maybe we'll do a font weight and make that bold. And maybe do a font size and bring that up to 18 pixels. So these ones that have any of these that contain this class are going to now really stand out within our text. So we go back up to the HTML document and refresh it. You can see that in fact it did apply. That was styling values. So it had brought a yellow background. It brought the text up to bold resize the text. And when you look at it, you can see that, okay, well, the text is still that old text, that font, and the color of the font is still the same. And that's the way that the styling will work, is that whatever, it's the same thing as having default styling. So any of the changes that you make are going to apply to any of the elements that are nested within the original element that has that styling applied to it. So any one of these divs is automatically going to contain this styling as.
All right, that's kind of annoying, but also pretty sure we're getting the gist of it. We saw the ID selector, we saw the class selector, ID selector, class selector, and we saw colors. And we understand the different ways you can set colors, and understanding that you should really stick to one format. Once you choose that one format, stick to it, whatever makes the most sense to you. All right, let's continue. CSS working with text and wording. Let's play with that.
In the previous lesson, we had looked at our options for fonts. We had added in font weight of bold. We had added font size. And what that did is that resized those fonts. And if you look down here, we've got something called text align. And previously in HTML, we used text decoration. So there's quite a lot of different aspects that actually apply to the text. So with font, we've got our option of selecting a font family. We can do font stretch, font variant. So most of the common ones that you would be using is family, size, and weight. You wouldn't be really using others as much, but again, there are some options with that. So if you want to make it italic or something like that, you could use font style. So besides the font abilities, you do have this text. So we're going to try to apply some text properties over to the div here. So text, and you can see here that we've got text align, text decoration. So that was when we were using our hyperlinks, we were actually removing out those default text decorations. So we can do that as well in here. We've got an option for text align. So this is also very commonly used to center, to right, to left, to justify.
Real quick, I want to look at my P tags. All right, as you can see, everything's changing. Google link in the P tag now has the bold. It has the specific styling of font family, which is all this good stuff. I just do whatever. And it also has the font size of 4M, which is huge. But 4M, as you can see, let me refresh the page, is adjusting to the page size. Not really sure if you can see that. It's very, very minimal difference, but it is adjusting slightly to the page size. Let me see. Yeah, it doesn't really do much there. Why did it do that? All right. But yeah, as we're going along with this, please add, oh, go ahead, Anelia.
That's Anora talking. Sorry.
Oh, but yeah, as we're going along with this, please feel free to add fake styling to your page. Even if you don't have anything on your page, if you're on CodePen, feel free to just throw some styling in, and then like add the actual tag to the page and see, I mean, to the CodePen, and see how it affects it and change it. Just that way you can start visualizing what these things do. But make sure you guys do practice, and we're going to have plenty of time to practice, but make sure you guys do practice.
By it. So maybe we can just do a center. So that's a very common one that gets used. So text wrap as well. So sometimes you want to have normal, suppress, or unrestricted, or no wrap at all. So I'm just going to go back out into this HTML and just show you how it works with the linking. And I'm just going to create some default links here within the text. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab all the links, the hyperlink tags, and remove out all that text decoration. So I'm just going to add another few. And maybe we can add some here within that span, just to show you the way that it works when it is nested within it. So we go back out here, and this is probably going to have quite a bit of stuff on here, but we can see that all of our hyperlinks are now underlined. And because
one day I'll fix my Wi-Fi. Hey, if y'all ever want to support and donate so I can get better Wi-Fi, feel free. Feel free. Oops. But also while this is struggling to load, please let me know if y'all feel like the extra CSS review is helpful, because CSS is a very small topic. You kind of get it once you get it. It's really just selectors and adding attributes. Beyond that, you can really learn them from Googling CSS styles that you specifically want to add. But even better than that is really like Googling how to style something you really want to make. Like, for example, a modal, right? That's a super common one that people have to Google for how to style. We're in the DOM being we're in the HTML document. Centering your modal class. So all of them are in the center, top 50%, left 50% transform. Modal example. This is a modal, the little thing that pops up on top of your page. Having it fixed. Bad modal example. Good modal example. Dealing with height. Dealing with overflow. Whole bunch of other stuff. The buttons. Obvious close button. Good styling is on you. So this is really, I'm not gonna lie, this is some complicated styling for I could have chose a simpler example. But this is what a modal looks like. You click the button, it opens the modal, and you close it. Very common thing. But yeah, generally that's how you're gonna want to figure out how to style something. CSS style for a button would have been a much easier example. And then you can boom, 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 default button versus a CSS button. Button color, background color. This is green. All right, so this one has the button. This is really just a unstyled button. This is after they styled it. But yeah, whole lot of stuff that you can steal from other people who are much better designers than I will ever be in my life. And we really don't have to work too hard beyond understanding like how the selectors are working, and what type of styling we're using, and how to like adjust those things to what we're trying to do. Does that make sense? Hello?
Yes.
I'm gonna say no. Can you elaborate?
All right. So again, we don't really need to know every single specific attribute. Like these are attributes that you put on the new span class element, right? We don't need to know, like, I do not have these memorized. I do not know every single style possible to apply to a navigation or UL. But what's more important is that we know, hey, how do I style a button? How do I style a paragraph? Like, how do I style CSS style for, I don't know, what else is for a table? Like, how do I style a table? People have already discovered all the best incredible styles that you'll ever think of, realistically. Let me find a better one. Popular styles. CSS styles for tables. 43 CSS tables. That sounds nice. Let's look at some periodic tables, I guess. Demo and code. All right, so this is, I don't know why I keep choosing the most complicated examples. But I constantly keep choosing the most complicated examples. But this is the literal most complicated way to look at a periodic table. And all of these are styled with CSS. They have the root element. On the root element, They have some pseudo selectors, and then they put the elements styling on it. But let me choose a much simpler example. I gotta stop doing that. Let's look at which one looks super simple. Though tables are not the best choice anyway for simple. Pricing tables. Jeez, I just keep getting more and more complicated. But for example, this is a good example though. Like creating this is like it requires a lot, right? Like, until you literally click on this and you get everything you need, copy and paste. Obviously, you shouldn't copy and paste everything because you want to understand the differences of what you want for what you need. But essentially, your job is to understand how these things are being selected and what attributes are being applied to them. Like this right here is a very, very, very specific selector where it checks first the type of the checkbox. This is the checkbox. And is this a checkbox? I'm pretty sure that's the checkbox. Let me make sure before I just say anything. Label, pricing, div class. Where is the checkbox? Checkbox. Oh, I don't know why I'm using this when they have the HTML over here. We're looking for an input with the type of checkbox. Or anything with type of checkbox, actually. But I don't see an input with type of checkbox. Am I searching this? There we go. All right, so we have this input. This is very hard to read. But we have this input with a type of checkbox. And we should immediately be able to be like, hey, this right here is selecting something that is looking for the type equals checkbox. And if it is checked, if it's not checked, this is going to be the styling. If I have a class of pricing with the pseudo selector called checked plus, and the plus means direct adjacent is the adjacent selector. So plus a label, and we see there's no period, there's no hashtag. So it means label as in label element. So if I press label element. So it's looking for something with price checked, a label that's next to price checked, pricing, class of pricing with a pseudo selector of checked. This checkbox, when it gets clicked, is going to be like, hey, I now have a pseudo class called checked. Pseudo classes do not really exist, but we know them because of the status of the element. So as I'm trying to explain, I don't know if I'm doing a good job, but your goal here is not to memorize all of these things, but have the ability to read even the most complicated formation of CSS selectors and be able to understand how these attributes are being applied to whichever selector, which is why we went through Flexbox, why we went through selectors, and then we started looking at applying CSS to selectors. And now we're looking at like the most advanced level of this and what you kind of need to be able to do, which is really read this and understand what's being applied underneath it. Did that make more sense?
That's cool for me.
Thank you, Will. Arnelia, did that make more sense? Arnelia.
Yes, it made sense.
All right, thank you. All right, so with that understood, I do want us to look at selectors, pseudo selectors again, only because oh, actually we should go through this, how the box model works. Well, not this, but this just like Flexbox, there is a general box design pattern for designing where we treat everything as in a box. I want us to go over pseudo classes. Working with backgrounds, not so much. Display property, yes. Pseudo elements, I'm gonna share that with y'all. And we don't need this or this because y'all have experience using CSS with HTML to create a web template simply by creating your style sheet and applying your style sheet into the page, either through a style tag or literally linking a reference to the style sheet like so. Oops. Link href rel style sheet. So this is a link to a style sheet. This one is an external style sheet. So let's look at the time, 8:49. All right, we got 10 minutes. Let's go through this box model, see what we can do for the pseudo classes, and then display properties. And those are gonna cover what you need to know for CSS. Wrong thing. CSS box model.
When we talk about the box model, and I'm just going to give you an example here of what that box model is. So we've got something called the box model in CSS. And what that is, that's how we're going to use margins, borders, and padding. Equals. And I'm going to bring that out over here. So I'm going to call to that ID as a selector, my margin, and background color. And we'll give it a background color of this blue. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply that margin. So much like what we had done there with the div, that we had that background color. And when we applied padding, that actually applied padding to what's internal within the box and not padding to what's external. So also I'm going to add in a border here so that we can see where that particular box ends and where it begins. So with borders, you have the ability to do colors, you have the ability to do border widths, and you can also do everything all together. So you have also border images and a whole bunch of stuff you can do with borders. So you can do a border image repeat, and this is now that CSS3 styling. So again, you can also make a border radius, so make it rounded. So for this one, we're just going to talk about setting a regular border. So what we want to have a border.
Oh, actually, I have a great visual for this. I'm tripping. Let's show you the visual of what we're describing here when we say box model. So this is the box model, right? Everything, every element is this. This is the element. It has padding, it has this border, and it has this margin. So the box model is describing how we are styling these things in respect to these things. Padding is how much space is between the content and like where the actual element is considered ending. So right here is where the element considers to be ended. The border is then at the end of the element, and you can like apply styling like dotted lines. I think he was going to make his border black and whatnot. And then margin is the space beyond the end of your element. Once your element ends and the border is, you can put space in respect to the margin to make other elements around it respect that this element needs its own space and does not want to be cluttered on the page next to other elements. So with that understanding, let's see how he plays with the box model of elements.
Border that's maybe going to be yellow, so that really does stand out there. And we're going to add in a solid border, and we're going to make it 3 pixels wide. And with borders, again, you can combine all these elements or all these values, or you could do something like border color, and then set the color this way, and you can be more specific. So you could list out the properties or do these kind of combined properties. And And so this is more of a short form of writing it, because most of the time when you're setting a border, you're going to need a color, you need to specify it, as well as you're going to have to give it a width. So we go back out here. We can see here that we've written out that box model CSS. We've got that yellow border that we set. And so we've created a blue box. And around that box, as you can see here, we've got this white space. And that white space is determined by margin. So if I was to actually increase that. So just to illustrate it a little bit better, so the outside part is going to be what's known as the margin. And the inside part is going to be what's known as padding. So if I add in padding of, and if you notice, I also added in this red box, and this was just more to illustrate and to be able to highlight that external margin that's around that element, HTML element. So when I add in padding, you can see that it adds this padding on the inside. So essentially with the box model, we've got the margin on the outside, so this is that red part. We've got the border, which is the yellow part. And then we've got the blue part, which is the actual padding. And then inside of everything, we've got our HTML content. So the padding itself changes the amount of space between what you have top, bottom, left, and right. And because this is taking up that entire width here, maybe we can see it a little bit better if we were to do a full width span or something like that. I just quickly added that in so we can better see where the actual content is sitting. And then we've got that padding around it. So top, bottom, left, and right, border, and then margin. So essentially this is the box model. Margin top, and if we do margin bottom, we can refresh that and we'll see that that white space is now at the bottom. And with margins, you can actually combine it. So when I'm typing in margin, this is actually a short form for encompassing all 4 sides of that particular box. So when I'm doing margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right, I'm specifying which part of the box and how many pixels are being applied. So also there's additional short form for that. And if you want to apply to top and bottom, but you only want to have left and right to have a 5 pix width, you can see when I refresh that, it's going to apply that 50 pixels to the top and bottom. And on the left and the right, it's only going to be using 5 pixels. And so we have additional short forms that we can do. So the next one is going to be the bottom, and it works clockwise. So it starts at the top. And then if you don't have a second value for the horizontal value, then it's just going to apply this to both of them. And the same thing with the top and bottom. So if you're not specifying top and bottom, it's just going to apply 50 pix to the top and the bottom. But as soon as we apply this bottom width and we're more specific with it, watch what it's going to do now. It's only going to do top 50, it's going to do bottom 10, and it's going to do left and right 5. So once we save that, back out to the code, and you see here that the top 50, bottom 10, and the left and right are 5. And again, going with this same setup that if we're working we're working clockwise. So first we have the top. And if the left isn't specified, it takes the right's value. But now we're specifying the left of 100 pix, and we go back out to the code and we refresh it. We see that in fact, indeed, it does apply that 100 pix on the left, 5 on the right, top and bottom 50. So they're all going to be different. All the sides are going to have different values. And this works the same way for padding. So as you can see here in padding, we've just got this short form. We're applying 30 pix all around. So again, much like what we were doing with the margin, if we want to apply 100 pix to top and bottom, we're going to refresh that, or we see that now we're applying that 100 pix. Sorry, that would be left and right. We're applying 100 pix. So left has 100 pix, right has 100 pix, and top and bottom are still 30. And then if we do one where we've got a smaller value, so we're just going to put 0. And you can see that even when I'm using 0, it's still going to use that 0 value of applying 0 pixels within that padding. And then so on, we're going to add in that right value. So we're going to do 0 pix again for the right value, just so that we can see that there is a difference. And we can see that there it is. It's been moved in all the way over to the left, 100 pix here. And it does take a little bit of playing around to understand exactly how this box model is working. But essentially, that's how you're able to set different widths, heights, and work with the box.
All right. So just to make sure what we just saw is understood. Actually, I want to do it in Chrome. Let's do it in Chrome. Inspect elements. Let's look at our box model again. Understanding that we have the ability. Why does it keep doing that? Okay, it doesn't want me to look. Weird. All right, but let me do it in here then. Index. We have the ability to mess with this stuff in shorthand, right? There's margin top, there's margin bottom, margin left, and margin right. And for the padding, exactly the same. So margin is the shorthand for all of these. If I just put one setting here, let's say 1M, this is going to apply 1M to margin, top, bottom, left, and right. If I do 1M and 2M, now this is, I believe, top and right. No. How does that go again? Shorthand property sets value thickness. If left is omitted, it is the same as right. If bottom is omitted, it is the same as top. If right is omitted, it is the same as top. Negative values for margin properties are allowed, but there may be specific limitations. All right, so as far as I remember, it goes top, right, left, bottom. If we only put 2 in there, right, that's top, and that should be the right element and left element. So this should be top and bottom is 1M and left and right is 2M. If I add a third, 3M, top, right, right and left, and then bottom. And then if I add a fourth, 4M, top, right, left, bottom. So take out bottom, top, right and left, and then this is bottom now. If I take out this bottom, this is top and bottom, and then this becomes left and right. Then take out this. This is top, bottom, left, and right. So that was what they were trying to cover. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Margin, shorthand, order. When 3 values are specified, the first applies to top, the second left and right, like I said, third to the bottom. 4 values, all of them. If you take out the third, then it's top, bottom for that one, and left and right for this one. So super simple to remember, but a little bit tricky to get used to. We are now at 9 o'clock. I failed to get us to discussing more pseudo classes and discussing the display property. So next class, we're not going to have any review. We're just going to finish up these two, and then we're going to move on to web design, I believe, or maybe more so JavaScript. I'm going to look at these a little bit, make sure. But yeah, sorry for not finishing up CSS today like I promised. The review took longer than it was supposed to. All right, y'all. How was it? How y'all feel?
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm gonna stop the
Gracias.
Have a good weekend.